The marble under my boots was the same as 5 years ago, cold, pristine, polished so sharply it nearly mirrored the ceiling lights above. The lobby of the Lorcan Institute hadn't changed, though I had. I stood still for a moment, inhaling the antiseptic chill of recycled air and ambition. My heels clicked once then again as I stepped toward the reception desk. She couldn't have been older than 24, maybe 25. Sharp ponytail, a badge that read, S. Greer. Her eyes paused on me, blinked twice, then tightened with a polite smile, the kind used on people who'd clearly made a mistake. "May I help you, Dr. Malis Rourke?" I said calmly, "here for the governing summit." She tapped briskly at her tablet. Her brow crinkled. "I'm sorry, you're not on the list. I expected that." "I was told I wouldn't be," I replied just as calmly. I stepped closer. Her confidence wavered. She glanced toward security, unsure whether I was delusional or dangerous. Before she could stammer a follow-up, a voice cut across the lobby like an insult in velvet. "Well, well. Look what Zurich spat out. Auric Maddox as performative as ever. Same perfectly parted hair, same scent of money and misplaced confidence. Did someone forget to tell you this is a closed summit?" he asked, strolling over like a man who thought his name was carved into the pillars. "This is for decision makers, not ghosts." He grinned, leaned one elbow on the counter. "I have to say, Malis showing up unlisted. That's a new level of desperate." I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my tablet. A few taps, one swipe. Greer's device pinged. She looked down. Froze. Executive. Clearance just updated. The doors to the executive elevator dinged softly. Opened. I turned back to Auric. "I'm not here for your approval," I said. "I'm here for control." And I walked past him as the security guard stepped aside, no one stopping me, no one speaking. The elevator was already waiting, humming like it knew what came next. The elevator rose in steady silence, but my thoughts traveled backward, years, not floors. Cavan Lorcan hadn't been a perfect man. He hated ceremony, ignored dress codes, and had a tendency to forget meals when an idea took hold. But he saw things clearly. He saw me clearly, long before I had credentials grants or a single published paper. When the board saw an orphaned grad student, he saw a partner in the making. He built the institute with his name, but he let his vision belong to all of us. That was what scared them. When the whispers started words like paranoid, obsessed, erratic, I knew exactly where they were coming from. The same men who nodded at his brilliance in public were quietly setting fire to his reputation behind closed doors. Then came the voluntary sabbatical, then the internal memo doctor. Lorcan has resigned from all official roles to focus on personal health. He never sent that memo. He never resigned, and I never saw him again. 3 days after that announcement, my badge access was revoked. They called it restructuring. I called it what it was, exile. They gave me a severance packet and a non-disclosure agreement I never signed. Zurich was supposed to be a pause, a reset, but all I did was dig. In basements and databases, public filings, and quiet emails. The research he'd been leading, the ethical AI initiative designed to prevent autonomous targeting in war zones, hadn't just been shelved, it had been scrubbed, stripped from servers, archived into oblivion. And the funders' defense contractors, the kind that profit when systems fail human control. They tried to erase him. When that failed, they tried to erase me. I spent 18 months building a response. By the time the elevator chimed, I had memorized every name, every face, and every blind vote that helped push him out. They thought they had buried his vision. They didn't realize I had carried it with me. The doors opened to the top floor. I stepped out, and the air was different here, still cold, but laced with the perfume of old power. It was time to show them what they'd left unfinished. Zurich gave me distance, and distance gave me clarity. The first step was silence. I cut contact with everyone connected to the Institute. No press rebuttals, no counterclaims. Let them believe the rumors. Let them say I disappeared into obscurity, that I was freelancing, consulting, drifting. It worked better if they thought I was nothing. Behind closed doors, I incorporated Ether Rourke Holdings through a trust registered in Liechtenstein. One firm led to another, a web of clean-sounding names: Ventra, Group, Iskalen Systems, Bloomreach Capital, each one a glove on the same hand. They never saw me coming. I identified former donors, first the ones disillusioned by what the Institute had become, scientists who'd sold their board seats out of disgust, widow estates with dormant voting proxies, university-linked investment arms with no interest in monitoring their allocations. I didn't need headlines. I needed shares. Every acquisition was legal. Every purchase was quiet. Most of the time, I bought them at a discount. In 18 months, I accumulated 79.1% of the Institute's voting shares. No fireworks, no declarations, just a carefully placed seed in every ledger. By the time anyone would notice, the tree was already rooted too deep to dig out. I called the operation Project Recall, not just for what they tried to forget, but for what I planned to restore. The irony never escaped me. They stripped my name from the internal directory, scrubbed my photo from the website, locked me out of my research folders. Now I was listed under a dozen legal identities in the SEC database, each one with more authority than anyone sitting in that summit upstairs. By the time I returned to D.C., the architecture of power had already shifted. The board just hadn't realized they weren't in charge anymore. As I walked toward the glass-paneled boardroom, I spotted Auric Maddox through the frosted edge. He was leaning over the table laughing, probably assuming today would go like every other summit, smooth, predictable, entirely his. I adjusted my collar and pushed open the door. Let them laugh while they still could. I didn't rush. Letting them underestimate me was half the strategy. Outside the elevator bank, the hallway buzzed with badge swipes, light conversation, and the scent of catered coffee. A few mid-level administrators passed by without recognizing me. Good. It wouldn't be that way for long. Auric appeared again, stepping out from a side corridor like a bad memory that refused to fade. He was holding a phone, feigning concern. "You're not getting in," he said, lowering his voice. "I've already flagged you. Miss Drest is on her way." I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on the elevator doors. "You really think crashing a shareholder summit is going to get you sympathy?" he added. "Security will be here in 2 minutes." The tablet in my hand buzzed. I didn't smile, not quite, but I let him see the faint shift in my expression as I glanced down. Executive Access Class A Voting Authority confirmed by legal timestamp 9:11 a.m. EST. I tilted the screen so he could see it just long enough to watch his face shift from smug to uncertain. "You're bluffing," he said. The elevator dinged. I stepped forward without breaking stride. The badge reader lit green, a soft chime. The doors parted like breath before a scream. I turned my head slightly toward him. "You should find your seat, Auric," I said quietly. Wouldn't want to miss the opening remarks. Inside the elevator, the panel glowed with floor numbers. I pressed the top one and stood still as the doors sealed shut. Alone, I let the silence settle over me, like armor. They'd built this entire summit to exclude people like me, outsiders, idealists, inconvenient truths. But now I was here not as a guest, not as a disruptor. I was the one with the vote. As the elevator climbed, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the leather folder. Inside documents they thought were scattered. Proof they'd prayed would stay buried. The weight of them felt satisfying in my hands. The elevator slowed. The light above me blinked once. And then the doors opened. The doors opened onto a room shaped like power-long table glass walls, leather chairs already half-filled with carefully groomed ambition. The conversations lulled, then faltered altogether as eyes found me. I didn't rush. I walked slowly to the seat nearest the head of the table, Evelyn Drest's seat. I didn't take it. Not yet. Instead, I placed my leather folder on the polished wood and opened it with steady fingers. A few seats down, Auric Maddox blinked hard, as if willing the vision of me to disappear. Evelyn's back stiffened before she turned lips tight and composed. "Excuse me," she said smoothly. "This is a private leadership summit, correct?" I replied. I tapped the tablet and turned it to face them. "And I am the controlling stakeholder." Holland Chen, seated at the far end, looked up sharply. His brows narrowed. When he saw the certificate displayed on the screen, his expression shifted, not disbelief, but recognition. "I don't know what game this is," Evelyn said, voice like velvet stretched over glass. "But this isn't your forum." "It is now," I said. "Ether Rourke Holdings owns 79.1% of the Institute's voting shares." Auric let out a laugh, but it died halfway through. "That's absurd." Chen stood. His voice was quiet but final. "She's telling the truth." The silence landed like a thunderclap. I tapped the screen again. The documents opened in sequence stock transfers, board appointments, registered proxies. Each one time-stamped, filed, signed. All legal. All final. Evelyn didn't blink, but I saw the tremor ripple down her jawline. "There's no record there is now," Chen said. "Legal confirmed her status as Class A authority at 9:11 this morning." The room shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Some eyes fell to their tablets. Others stole glances across the table, calculating. I kept my posture, even my voice, calm. "I'm not here to cause disruption," I said. "I'm here to correct direction." Evelyn's smile faded altogether. "Let's begin." I sat down, slid the final page toward her, and watched her fingers twitch above it. They thought I'd come armed with rhetoric. What I brought was evidence. I began with the NIH grants. Line items that were supposed to be earmarked for genomic ethics research, redirected to executive bonuses, and infrastructure reallocations that led directly to Evelyn's private consulting wing. The documents were dry, but the pattern was undeniable. The money hadn't just wandered, it had been marched with signatures. I watched the discomfort spread like a virus. A few board members leaned back in their chairs. One adjusted his collar. Auric scoffed once, then went quiet. Next came the licenses. I tapped to bring up the audit trail of Cavan's AI protocols, those meant to prevent autonomous weapons from making fatal decisions without human intervention. Somewhere in the shadows of administrative reshuffling, the code had been repackaged, stripped of its ethical lockouts, and sold under a corporate shell to a defense contractor known for its discretion. Evelyn tried to interrupt. I held up a hand. "I'm not finished." I clicked again. The screen dimmed slightly. Grainy security footage appeared. A hallway I knew well outside Lab 4B. The timestamp read 3 days before resignation notice. Cavan stood in frame, alive, alert, his movements sharp with frustration. Facing him, Auric leaning in, jabbing a finger at the file Cavan held. There was no sound, but the tension screamed through the image. Cavan pushed back. Auric grabbed the folder, and then Cavan clutched his chest. One hand reached out for the wall. His knees buckled slightly before the feed cut. A few audible gasps escaped around the table. Evelyn's hand drifted to her necklace as if searching for something solid. "No resignation," I said quietly. "No erratic behavior, just confrontation. And then collapse." I turned to Chen. Did legal ever receive documentation from Cavan confirming his resignation? Chen's answer was a slow shake of the head. A pause stretched and tight. No one reached for water. No one cleared their throat. Every eye had fixed on the screen, and no one dared blink. There was more. Much more. I tapped the remote again and brought up the next file. The screen shifted again, this time to a split frame, zoom window on the left, document view on the right. In the upper pane, Callan Trevors appeared still thin, still nervously blinking behind 2 large glasses, but steadier now than he'd been the last time I saw him, huddled outside the sub-level data center, clutching a USB like it could save his life. "Mr. Travers," I said, "can you please repeat what you shared with General Counsel?" He cleared his throat. "Yes, Dr. Rourke. I was an archival intern during the summer Cavan Lorcan left. 2 days after the resignation was announced, I was summoned to an executive office. Evelyn Dress told me I'd be receiving special clearance to perform a routine purge of legacy research assets." Chen leaned forward, listening now. Callan continued, voice steadier. "She said I didn't need to ask questions, just delete all folders labeled Lorcan AE1 through AE5. I started the process, but something felt wrong. I mirrored the data to an encrypted backup first, just in case. I nodded. "And what did you find?" The screen changed as Callan uploaded a folder. It unzipped quickly, thousands of internal emails, contracts, unaltered code. But the centerpiece was a memo bearing Auric Maddox's signature, authorizing the transfer of Lorcan's AI models to a private intermediary known for offshore relicensing. I didn't speak. I simply turned the document around for the board to see. Evelyn stayed silent. Auric looked like he'd swallowed glass. "The paper trail was buried deep," Callan added. "But I cross-referenced metadata. All of it lines up." I reached into the folder beside me and slid a thick packet to Chen. "Forensic audit," I said. "Independent, verified, chain of custody intact." He took it with quiet reverence. The boardroom had grown still again, not the silence of confusion this time, but the sharp collective breath of a reckoning. I looked across the table at faces I'd once feared. Now they couldn't meet my eyes. From the hallway, I heard the soft buzz of an intercom. 2 sets of footsteps approached. The door opened without a knock. 2 plainclothes agents stepped in, credentials, raised voices, calm but unmistakably final. "Evelyn dressed Auric Maddox," the taller one said. "We need you to come with us. No shouts, no protest. Just the subtle sound of a chair scraping back as Auric stood, his face ashen, his bravado gone." Evelyn remained seated a second longer, hands folded tightly, then rose with deliberate grace, like she still believed posture could rewrite the moment. Neither looked at me as they passed. The door clicked shut behind them, and the silence that followed was marble, hard, smooth, unforgiving. I let the weight settle before I spoke. "As of this morning, I began a new board structure has been registered with the Secretary of State. Mr. Chen has copies of the legal filings. I passed a second folder across the table. There will be 12 seats. 7 have been reassigned. 5 are vacated effective immediately. If you choose to resign voluntarily, your statements will be noted as cooperative. One by one, hands moved, not loud, not rushed, just quiet acknowledgments of a tide too strong to resist. 5 directors slid their badges forward. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. I tapped the screen behind me. The Institute's crest appeared, followed by a single line beneath it, the Lorcan Ethical Charter, reinstated and binding. No one clapped. It wasn't that kind of moment. "This charter," I continued, "will govern all research partnerships, licensing agreements, grant distributions, and strategic planning moving forward. All departments will undergo independent ethics audits within the quarter." Chen nodded from the end of the table, confirming with quiet authority. "Already in motion. The charter has been certified and posted." For the first time since I walked into the room, I exhaled. No applause, no celebration. Just a room slowly realigning. The damage was deep, but the rot had been cut out. Now came the harder part, proving something better could grow in its place. I turned toward the east window, sunlight flickering against the glass. That's when the courier arrived with a letter addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. The envelope was heavier than it looked, thick paper, cream-colored, with the imprint of a downtown law firm I knew too well. It came with a simple note, confidential. For Dr. Malus Rourke. Inside was a sworn statement bearing Evelyn Drest's name and signature. Her handwriting, still meticulous, spelled out what had always lived in the shadows of our grief. She had overridden the medication protocol during Kavan's final weeks. The dosage had been adjusted just enough to destabilize his system, masked behind a fabricated health decline. No alarms, just decay. She hadn't acted alone, but she'd acted first. The last page was a request from her legal team conditional immunity on remaining financial charges in exchange for cooperation and a full deposition. They were offering leverage silence containment. I folded the papers, placed them back in the envelope, and wrote one sentence in reply, "No deal. Let her face what she built." The message went out that afternoon. By morning, the Institute's internal announcement went live. It was understated just the way I wanted it. Effective immediately, Dr. Malis Rourke has been named Executive Director of the Lorcan Institute for Applied Futures. There was no press conference, no champagne, just an updated title on the door Cavan once opened for me, and a long hallway full of people who didn't yet know whether I would be their reckoning or their renewal. I spent the next hours walking through departments, not issuing directives, not making demands, just listening. The labs were quieter now. The tension had receded, but something like uncertainty still lingered in the air, clinging to corners like dust left after a storm. In the courtyard, they'd started erecting the new signage. I watched workers unscrew the last plaque bearing Evelyn's name and lower it into a cardboard box without ceremony. A few students stood nearby, glancing at me curious but wary. I nodded once and turned back inside, passing through the foyer that had once denied me entry. This time, no one stopped me. No one looked away. Later that evening, I unlocked Cavan's office and stepped inside for the first time. The banner rippled gently above the courtyard as the wind moved through the trees. The letters were clean, precise, unadorned. The Lorcan Institute for Applied Futures. No symbols, no slogans, just the name and a promise. Beneath it, newly set into the stone plaza, was a quote carved in polished steel. Cavan's words pulled from an old whiteboard now long gone. Science serves no master but the truth. I read it aloud once before stepping up to the podium. The courtyard was filled, faculty, student, staff. A few reporters loitered at the edge scribbling, but this wasn't for them. "We are not rebuilding," I said. "We are redefining." Then I announced the Navarro Global Fellowship, a fund seeded from the restitution recovered in the audit. It would offer grants to underrepresented minds across the world, inventors, researchers, misfits who'd been told no too often in rooms built to reward sameness. The crowd was silent. Then slowly it gave way to quiet applause, measured, thoughtful. Not applause for a victory, but for something beginning. When the ceremony ended, I walked back alone. The hallways didn't echo the way they used to. They breathed with life now reshaped by uncertainty and hope. I passed no portraits, no memorial plaques. That was intentional. We were done glorifying the names. From now on, it would be the work that spoke. My new office still smelled faintly of varnish and dust. They'd cleaned it, but hadn't touched the bookshelf. On the top shelf, nestled between an old copy of Gödel Escher Bach and a stack of journals, was a small envelope yellowed at the edges. It was addressed in Cavan's handwriting to Malis. I sat down, opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet, a note written in ink that hadn't yet faded. "I don't know what's coming, but if you're reading this, I probably lost the fight. Be the future. Not theirs, yours. You already know what needs to be done." I folded it carefully and returned it to the envelope. The light outside the window was soft. I closed my eyes just for a moment and let it in.